Perfect. And we're good. So Elisha Covey, thank you so much for doing this. And as I had said, I followed you for a while, and you are a huge expander for me. And I think life is a timely thing. I believe that with all my heart. And as I sort of a little while ago, I started to venture into my own transition professionally and personally. So much expanding and good things have been happening. And I don't know how I came across your platform. I just did. It just popped up. And then I started watching your videos and things like that. And so many things resonated that I was like, holy cow. And then, yeah. And then this kind of the transitional professional point in my life. And then I reached out and it worked out. So I'm so honored. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm excited to be with you.
Oh my goodness. So if I may, here we
Yeah,
go. If
by
I may,
all.
I have it written because I know how I have it written. So, um, can you please just take me to all of it, but not all of it because we don't have that kind of time. Nobody
No,
does.
I wouldn't.
No one's got that kind of time. But
Girl, you have to have like a popcorn, some wine,
one
probably a
perfect glass
sandwich.
of wine,
Like we
glasses
don't
of
want to do it
wine.
all.
Like I'm
Multiple
good at
days.
wine. Um, but no, I'm so curious because if I can go back a little bit in terms of how you kind of arrived where you are, and I know that's so multifaceted, but what resonates so much with me is that I know that years ago you had your own business. I believe it was baking, it was a bakery,
Mhm.
cupcakes, I believe. Is that correct?
That's it.
Yep, because they looked lovely. Because I was looking, because my sister's also does something similar. And then I know that you transitioned out and then you started a whole new adventure in terms of pivoting pivoting businesses, pivoting locations, all the things that sort of went into that. And I know it was probably a lot. But my thing is how were you able to sort of face that fear of it? Because in this period for myself, as I'm transitioning, there's just you don't know where the safety net is on the other side.
Mm.
And it's scary.
Yes.
And it's scary. And I'm just how you were able to do it with, I don't want to say fearlessness, because I'm sure there's so many emotions, but it's just that following your intuition. It's the following your gut, but
Mhm.
saying it and doing it are hard. I can say it. It's the release, it's the letting go, and it's the going. So and then I would love to know how you went through that or describe that
Of
process.
course. So I think there's really two key points
Mm,
to pivoting. And the first one is to understand, of course, you need to think about the long term goals and does this align with my long term goal? But I think where a lot of people get overwhelmed and create more anxiety is by thinking that they have to understand the 500 steps to get from point A to point B, right?
okay.
So
Yep.
the number one thing to remember is all you need in this very moment is your next right step. And the way that you know that it's the right step is, first of all, is it leading you towards your ultimate goal? And then, second of all, does it feel good? Your intuition and your heart is going to tell you, yes, this is the next right step. And I feel, even if I feel a little bit nervous, I feel excited about it too. There's something in me that's like, this is it. This is right. That's your intuition. So it's only knowing the next right step and then having the courage to take that next right step. Look back at what you've done before. So a lot of people have issues with feeling like they're able or trusting themselves. And what I always tell people is, I'm like, look at your history of work, just like you would with anyone else. Have you taken care of yourself in the past? Have you always succeeded? Even if you fell down, were you able to get back up? Okay, then you can fucking do it. So it's like you've been doing it for 20, 30, 40, however old you are years, and
Yeah.
you haven't died yet. So you've got this. And all it is one step. So it takes a lot less courage to take that one step than it does to overthink and take the next 500 steps before they're even here.
So
Does
simple.
that
And I,
make
and I mean that like in the best way, like that
It's so
that
simple?
sits. That
It
sits
is.
well because it can be and it is so overwhelming. And as as overthinkers, as you're making these big decisions, and then there's family and relationships and all the things that obviously accompany that. Um, but I also think it's so important and is the clear image of where you want to go, right? I think that's first, and I think that's often we get lost in little steps, like you said, like you get lost in them, and then the actual vision of where you want to go gets cloudy, and
It
then
gets
it's
cloudy, and then also it can lose its joy. So the more that you
yeah,
sit there and like rip it apart and like, but what if I do this or what if I do that? And then if this fails and then if that, it's just like, oh, please take a chill pill. This is a gift that we have as women. I'm sure men do too, but I can't speak for them. I just, as a woman, I know that I can use this tool for me or against me. The fact that we can see one task and see the 500 tasks that are that encapsulate that task can
yeah,
be a gift, but it can also stop you from taking that one step, that next right step forward. So I think remembering that, okay, I understand that this encapsulates a lot of things, but I'm just going to focus on this next right step because it's what feels right. And once I've made that step and I settle, then I'm going to take the next right step. And you can always give yourself that peace. I know that I'm going to take the next right step. That's all you have to have.
that's amazing. And that's amazing. And I have to also say too, part of the process, as I'm sure you experienced, and I think we will continue to experience in all of our lives, but I've become particularly aware of is you said something in one of your videos that I was like, oh my goodness, yes. And I was driving like, yes. And I'm trying to keep up with yes. And it was about how business, wait, no, you worded it so eloquently, and I'm not going to do it as well, but it was basically how your business and your personal life reflect and mirror one another.
They
And
do.
I was like, oh, heck yeah. So when things are going energetically, lovingly in one direction in your personal, it is naturally going to reflect in your business. And in this process that I personally am in right now, there's just been so much reflection and that's so much forced of you got to get some shadow work done and some things straight, so that it can all kind of flow and align together. And the more you would neglect one half versus the other, they conflict, is the best way. So in part of that journey and in part of that process, what I'm really acknowledging and having to work through are relationships, circumstances, people that you need to separate from in order to
Mhm.
make other things kind of align personally and professionally.
Mhm.
So I've had to really examine people in my life, friendships, family, all of it. And really, and it's very difficult
Yeah.
because if you're not a cheerleader for me, and I mean a real one, then I don't know if this is like, I don't know going forward how this is going to work out. And having those conversations with myself, coming to terms with that, and having to really separate yourself at times from people, circumstances, without anger or resentment or anything, but just my next chapter may not unfortunately involve you. So in that process of having to separate from people, circumstances, etc., can you describe how you were able to do that? Because I think it's something that as we evolve and grow has to happen.
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful question. And it's one that, especially as women, we often have so many feelings tied around because just because someone isn't being a cheerleader for us at this moment doesn't mean they haven't been in the past. And so
That's
there's
right.
so many mixed emotions on,
Yeah.
do I move forward or don't I? So what the easiest way for me that I have come to understand and process through these types of scenarios is by clearly understanding my boundaries. Because in the end, you can't control anyone's actions. I can't control if Susie supports me, right? I
Right.
can't control Susie's next moves. And what Susie chooses to do is not going to control what I am choosing to do.
Right.
However, I can choose what friends I wish to keep in my life and invest in. And I choose those things by setting the appropriate boundaries. So the boundary isn't for Susie, the boundary is for Elisha. I am
Right.
choosing that if I'm going to invest time into friends, because my
Yeah.
time is very valuable, that those friends, when I leave their presence, I am going to feel uplifted. I'm going to feel energetically aligned. I'm going to feel love for them and love in return. That's my personal boundary with my friendships, right? And
Mhm.
so when I leave the presence of a friend, if I can't say that I felt those things, then I'll move into my boundary system. So green, yellow, red, and I'll figure it out. And
Okay.
it's very simple. I'll tell you one of my favorite books, which I usually have it actually right here, is Melissa Urban's Book of Boundaries. This is a fabulous book. If you have not
Okay.
read it, and you are a woman, you should read it because
Okay.
I don't know any women personally, and I know many that come to boundaries naturally.
No,
It
no,
tends to
I
be
agree.
it tends to be that we take care of everyone else first and we have zero boundaries, thinking that we're loving, but really we're sabotaging our relationships. So until you understand that setting boundaries for yourself is the most loving thing that you can do, not only for yourself but others, your
Right.
relationships will fail.
And I know this, I heard this once, and it really sat with me as well. And it was before you, because as women, like you said, we are quite loving. We want to be kind. Like our natural instinct is to be kind, if that makes sense.
Of
And
course.
I think that I heard this once where someone said, before you rip yourself apart and try and be there for everybody, ask yourself the question, do you even like them? Like as a person, like not hate them, but I mean, we try so hard to be liked and to be nurtured, to be what people need to be, that sometimes the question was, do you ever ask yourself, do you actually want this friendship? Do you want this relationship? Rather than worrying about what they're thinking or what they're needing at that moment, or just wanting to be helpful or what have you, is this something you actually really want? Is this person aligning with you? Like, are you asking yourself that question? And I don't know how or why that hit the way that it did. I'm like, I don't think I've ever asked that question. Like, I've never actually, I evaluate and critically think of myself all the time, what I could do, should do, could have done better for that person or that situation all the time. But I'm like, how often do I actually analyze, well, wait a second, was that okay for me though? Like, was that like, I'm like, I don't know that I've ever consciously asked that question. And that was part of this reflection for me too. It's like, I think I need to ask that a little bit more. And I think that aligns very beautifully with this idea with boundaries. It's like, well, hold on a minute.
Yeah.
I'm here too.
And the
Yeah.
question doesn't have to be, do I like Susie? That's a little bit harder to answer because depending on how Susie's behaving, I might like her or I might not like her. The
Yeah.
question really is, do I like our friendship? Do I like the energetics we share? Because that also takes the person out of it. Then you don't have to feel, I'm not attacking Susie. Susie could be
Right.
in a part in her life that is really difficult. And
Yeah.
the way that she's handling that scenario might not be one that I can get behind and energetically support. And that's okay. But that doesn't mean I don't like Susie. That
Right.
just means right now our friendship is in an 8 on the wide part. That doesn't mean I have to end it with her. It just
Right.
means I'm going to manage my expectations of her because what can she provide at the moment, but then also evaluate my boundary for the friendship. So it sounds like a boundary to be in a friendship with you is that you actually like the friendship. And of course, that's very logical. But if you don't put those boundaries in place for yourself,
Right.
then you're constantly going off the last feeling. Feelings are very
Mm.
important because they're real, but
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that they always align with the facts. So
You
we have to
absolutely.
acknowledge that feeling and allow ourselves to process it, but then also process the facts too. And I think that's where boundaries really help tie those two together in a
Yeah.
clear and concise manner.
Now, speaking of boundaries, in a beautiful way, I would love to talk to you about, because I know as a mom, I would love to talk about guilt. Let me explain. So I have littles, and and I obviously they're beautiful, and I love them dearly, and they're 6 and 4. But in the process of the reinvention of self, right? So like we're constantly evolving and we're constantly reinventing ourselves. The mom guilt is a very, very real thing. And not to say that dads that they don't have it. Again, it's just speaking from my own lens. It's how to prioritize and to separate time for myself, time for my business, time for my children, time to be a wife. Like the idea of trying to be so many things and the guilt that sort of has come along with that, I personally have found overwhelming at times because it's
Oh,
like I want all those things and I do, and then I'm on my phone, and even though I'm working from the perspective of, let's say, kids or relationships, it's like, ah, and then I get yanked in, and I'm like, okay. So like just trying to manage that. So I'm curious how, because I know, my goodness, what you manage and sort of what you've been successful with, getting very clear on how to manage those feelings of guilt and yet prioritizing and honoring the relationships in our lives.
yeah.
I'm very curious if you could describe that process for yourself.
Sure. I think it's a great question. And I think a lot of women go through this time in their lives. And to tell you the truth, I used to feel guilt around these things. I don't feel it anymore at all. I'm like guilt free. And here's
You
how I did
bottle
it.
it, tell it, like just
No, no, I'll give you the two. It's only two things.
oh,
It's very
God.
simple. Very, very simple. It's learning to harmonize and then
Okay.
setting boundaries. So it's a very simple thing. You have very many hats that you wear, right?
Yes.
So what
Yes.
you need to understand is that you have to harmonize between these hats. That's the first thing.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
mom, business owner, wife, sister, friend, these are all hats, and we're going to harmonize between them. Having the idea that there's balance in these roles to me is ludicrous, and I hate that word. Like
Okay.
almost never will you ever hear me say balance, because the only way something is balanced is if it's 100% equal. So I can
Right.
balance a scale by putting 100 grams of flour on one side and 100 grams of water on the other side. Yes, they're two different hats and two different roles, but they still both weigh 100 grams. So that
Okay.
is balanced. But in actuality, you
Right.
are never going to spend a balanced amount of time being a friend, a wife, a mother, and a business owner. So understanding that those things will never balance, they will only ever harmonize, and each day is different, allows you to come to those roles with peace and joy, knowing that I'm going to take the next right step in each role
Hmm.
based off of my intuition and what feels good. So
Yes.
I'm going to flow between those roles and harmonize between them and do what the next right step is in each of those roles. For my business today, I'm going to take the next right step. For my spouse today, I'm going to take the next right step. For my children, and then for my friends, or whatever other hats you're wearing. So that's role one. You harmonize.
Mm.
Everything is about harmony. And then number two is your boundaries. So, for instance, you're feeling guilt most likely because you're not being present in the
Yes.
role that you're wearing at the time, right?
Yes.
So if
Yes.
I have selected that this is going to be my children's time, then I'm going to follow my own boundary for that. I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm not going to take business calls. There is no fucking emergencies. It's like, okay, the business is going to die in 12 hours. Like, are you shitting me? Let's just be realistic here. No one's dying. So if I've decided that this is the time that I'm going to focus on my children, then everything else is just going to wait. And that's a boundary. And that's a boundary for myself more so than the other people who are having to wait. Because trust me, they don't care that much. And I had to learn with employees, they might make you think they're going to die. Like, I can't do anything if you don't answer this question.
100%.
That's not
Yeah.
true. And then what that shows you is that you haven't empowered your employee. So you, next time you put your business hat on, need to think about, why does your employee not feel empowered to handle something that they need you that badly, right?
Whew. Yeah. Oh my
So
goodness.
it's just those two things: harmonizing and boundaries, and honoring them.
And honoring them. And that, yep. And that has 100%, that has more to, yep.
Do with
Because
you than anyone
me,
else.
it's 100% me,
So
and how I can.
the second you want to lay down that guilt and just pick up harmonizing and boundaries, you can do it.
So
Bye bye, mom guilt. That's like hasta la vista, baby. I have more important things to do.
that I'm pausing for no other reason other than how it's just settling. Like it's just going in the layers of, that I have in my head. And part of this process, because I started this podcast a couple of years ago, and it was coming from a place of, I felt I was coming out of a couple of things with postpartum, and I was coming out of a couple of things and a lot of complacency in my life, and really seeking people and information and knowledge that I wanted control over, because I wasn't finding resources that I felt were applicable, approachable, affordable, where I'm like, this is crazy. So
Exactly what you just said. You
yeah,
wanted coaching, so you started a
so I
podcast.
literally wanted to start talking to people that I felt like I could trust, or that I did the research. I'm like, no, I feel like I want to speak to this person because I I have a grasp on what they represent and who they are, and I'm going to speak to that and take that. And then it became addictive because then you start connecting with people that are very passionate or knowledgeable, whatever the topic or situation. And then I'm connecting with those people, and I was like, I felt like this is amazing. Like I'm wow. And then it just became a thing where I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah, like the questions that you're asking, like some of the questions you've asked, I've heard these questions from so many women. So it's beautiful because once you share it, I know
Yes.
that by telling you, I can impact more than just you. I can impact everyone you're connected to.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful way to be able to share that. So I commend you for it.
100%. Well, thank you. And 100%. And I just recently, I wrote it down because I just watched it or heard it the other day, but it was one of your videos, and it was, oh, hang on. It was, because I have many here. One second. Um, oh, how did you word it? One was on shadow. Oh, and the other one was, so there was a video that you spoke about, and again, it hit, and it was about we think too small
Mhm.
and of ourselves, there's this sort of, I don't know if I want to say fear, maybe fear, but even options that you can think bigger. So I think of, and what hit me, and I remember I heard it, and again, I think life is timing, because it was when you said it, how you said it, and where I was when I received it, that something kind of went click, and I click. And I look at kind of where I am now, and I'm a teacher. I'm a high school teacher. I have a master's degree in leadership and education. I sort of set a pathway in my life that I was passionate about, excited about, all the things, but looking back on it, I knew it was safe. I knew it was safe, and that's okay. Like in my brain, it's like, no, I can do the things. I can have the family thing. I can do the what, like I can do the things, all the things that I want to do while still feeling impactful and useful. It all made sense. And then at this stage in my life where I'm making a transition into my own business and into more of the finance world and things that I want to do, and again, what that is forcing and reflecting back, and the shadows that I need to work through. Um, what what really hit me when when that video, when I watched it, was I never knew there was any other option that could be safe. Like it was about what was in front of me, what I could do well, what made sense in the longevity of my life. That's what I was going to do. And that's what I pursued fully, open heart. Like that's what I wanted. And now at this stage, it's like there were so many other things. Had I not had that fear, and had I not, and even again, the I'll say programming, if I don't know if that's the right word really, but the message around me was what's safe, what's safe, what's safe. And as much as I appreciate that, and I'm so grateful and blessed in so many parts of my life, I have come to realize, though, the truth of the matter is the safety has kept me smaller than I'm capable of. Now, coming to that now, and now it's like, well, now what are you going to do? It's like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. I think the key thing that you said is the safety.
Yes.
It's not real. It's an illusion.
Not real. It's not
Yeah.
real.
The illusion of safety
Yeah,
has kept you.
100%.
Yeah, because when you actually look backwards on your life,
Yes.
and I do this quite frequently, I notice that every time that I achieved something big, before I achieved that something big, I was just like, oh my God, this is so scary. And then
Yeah.
looking back, I don't even remember the exact things that scared me. I'm like, that's ridiculous because what's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to fail. Ooh, it's
And
just like, you know what? We all fail consistently and we all get back up. So I don't really think there is anything such as failure. It's just like, oh, it's just another learning experience. And none of us are getting out of here alive. And none of us are getting out of here with any of our things. And none of us are we're all going out butt naked and probably, hopefully, old and wrinkled. So it's like, just take whatever it is that your passion is pushing you forward to,
yeah.
operate in your genius. You know your genius by when you feel in flow. There's a lot of things that I did for the first 30 years of my life that were in my excellence zone. I am great at anything I put my mind to. And I feel that most people are too.
Yeah.
As long as you agree with that in yourself,
Right.
then I can be great at it. Now, like, I don't in my mind think I would be a great basketball player because I'm 5'2".
Me
So
too.
I'm not gonna go out saying that because in my own mind, I think that's ridiculous. But
Right.
anything that I think that I'm capable of, I can perform in excellence. However, that
Right.
doesn't mean that I want to live there. Excellence is great for getting a task done that needs to be done at the moment and then finding the right people to delegate that task to, that is their genius, right? We
Right.
all need to be operating in our own geniuses because we're all different and that is the gift that we bring to the world. But when we focus in our excellence all the time, there's nothing special there. There's no magic. Maybe it got done really well, but someone else could have been doing it better than you and happier while they were doing it. So that is the opportunity that you have as a business owner, is to be constantly watching what your team is doing and figuring them out as people and seeing what is their genius and what are the things that I'm still doing in my excellence that I can give to them that are going to make them feel like a superstar because it's their genius, not their excellence, right? So we're constantly doing that and bringing those types of people into our businesses that fill those roles. So you always want to look at what is this person's genius and what are the things that I can give to them that are not mine that I have been doing. Does that make sense?
That that makes so much sense. And I think something you said, and if my husband were here, he'd laugh because we've had that. It's been the line recently is in what's the worst that's going to happen and live there. Like, as in, no, sorry, what's the worst that's going to happen or worst possible outcome? Let's plan it out. So, like, we're going to go into something that's scary. We're not sure, or I'm not sure. And he's like, okay, perfect. Then we need to pretend and play out the worst possible outcome. And if we can handle it, if we can manage it, if in the end, the worst that could ever happen, and you're okay right at the end, then there's no fear, right? So
Yeah.
if you are prepared for the worst, and he's like, that's not what you're anticipating, but so you have that sort of feeling of like, okay, I know exactly what's the worst case out of this, and I know I'm going to be fine.
Yep.
So let's go then. So let's just go forward and just try it. You were one of the first, not the only, but one of the first influencers, if you, I'll use the word influencers, I would say more respect, business women that I've ever heard on a social media platform that have incorporated professional landscape and energetics.
Oh,
And
thank
and is it, I mean, I hear a lot of podcasts and a lot of people, and I'm on the other side of the world, but I don't hear it often where I hear professional, successful women confident in their feminine, which is something that I didn't know you could combine as well, because the language, it's a very masculine, like, business. I'm not saying it's not difficult, obviously it is, but I'm saying, you kind of put on the masculine hat and that's how you're going to be successful. Where it's like with your platform, but owning your feminine is a very positive and powerful thing, knowing that there are times that you may switch roles a little bit and that's okay. But
It's
the
that same thing
energetic,
we just talked about. You're just harmonizing.
you just harmonize it and just own the fact that we are both, but it's very powerful and sexy to understand that we are feminine and to own that, and to, the energetics that come with that, where it aligns with me so much, but I don't hear it often on a business platform. And
Thank
then
you.
have someone who's like, I still look good, bitch. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm equally as successful as the lot of them, whatever. So it's just something that with your platform also very much resonated with me, is that it's the combination of have a full spectrum, the well-rounded spectrum, if you will, versus the business suit in your masculine. This is what I need to do to be successful. Not necessarily. Not necessarily. I can still look good in my heels.
Yeah, I think you can take that approach if you want, but I
Yep.
think as a woman, in
Mhm.
the end, you will feel depleted because you have to
Yeah.
honor who you are. You have to
Mhm.
honor what you were born in. And this
Mhm.
vessel is this lifetime around, I'm a woman. So
Yeah.
it's like I want to honor that. I want to appreciate that. I want to enjoy all of the gifts that come with that. And
Yeah.
if I'm constantly trying to be better than the next man, I'm
Yeah.
not appreciating who I am. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to harmonize between my masculine and feminine energy to get the job done.
Yeah.
Well, what does this job require of me? What is the next right step here? And sometimes it's putting on a more masculine
Yep.
stance, and sometimes it's more feminine. And it's really just being free to know that you're going to make the right choice and it's going to be good. Like it just will.
That's amazing. There was an interview you did, and I was laughing in the best way. It was like a whole segment on you talking about birth control and your period. And then there was another one talking about entrepreneurship and investing. And I'm like, this is the greatest thing I have ever seen. Because like it was just reels and it was going through my phone. So like one video was about being on your period and your cycle and understanding your cycle and having your partner as part of that process. And then I was going, and then the next one was like investing and business. I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've
This
ever
is
seen.
real life,
This is
right?
real life where you're just
It's real life.
combining it versus separating it. And I'm like, this is everything right now for me. I'm like, that's amazing. So
Oh,
I had to acknowledge it and just let you know that I
you.
think it's amazing. So thank you so much again. And
No.
yeah, keep just whatever, just keep doing you, because I'm just going to keep watching
Oh, thank you
and
so
being
much.
inspired to do it. And the impact is really, really real all the way across the world, but it is. So thank you again.
Well, I'm really, really grateful. And it was my pleasure to meet you and to be able to share. I enjoyed this time and
Thank
I'm
you.
wishing you tons of success. You've got this. And if you ever need anything, you know how to get a hold of me.